What black market did kids at your school run? FNC1A1 said. I was in elementary school when pugs were big. Everyone had cool slammers and stuff, but I didn't have money for good ones. My dad made one out of 1/2 mild steel for me and used an engraving pen to make a simple pattern. Everyone was asking me where I got them from. I didn't want to lose my unfair edge, but I also knew I could make money. My dad had a big sheet of this 1/2 steel. I told them I was the only one who could get them. I sold them for $15 a pop. My dad kept 10, I got 5. And that's when I learned what overhead was. Edit, first silver. Neato, thanks. Flavery Boat 50 said. My school used the metallic ends of pencils as a currency. Bronze was rarest, so it was the most expensive. Green was most common, so it was the least. We traded for erasers or pencil cases or a spot up in the 4-square line. Eventually got banned, but we still operated with people acting as banks to keep the currency hidden and to keep transactions hidden. Has no gimmick said. Step right up, step right up. See the 8th wonder of the world, folks, right here, just 25 cents a ticket. A hidden treasure from the farthest Orient, crafted by 1,000 Chinese laborers using only the finest grade India rubber. Enchanted by secret Confucian magic to move of its own volition, it buzzes continuously with energy said to be drawn from the dome of heaven. Its undulating motions, at once repulsive and transfixing, are likened to the hypnotic sway of a king cobra. I present to you, even now still sticky with the fragrant dew of a foreign clime, the disembodied phallus of Beijing. Beard of Valor said. For people who think this is a joke, for a long time whenever a man had to get rid of porn because his mom found it, or his wife girlfriend, or he was moving and didn't want to bring his forever alone stash of decades-old nudie rags, he would put them in a shitty old duffel or trash bag and leave them around. Like in the old abandoned house, or the woods, or something. Because that's how they found porn and they wanted to give it back to the great porn collective. Altiosities Fortius Sades. In my experience, it's more a wife or somebody throws out a big box of porn, and then somebody steals it from the garbage, and having now weird to hide 60 magazine in their house at 13 years old, they hide it in the woods. I got my porn at 14 by a female friend's parents got divorced and the wife was throwing out like 2 big boxes of porn magazines when I was over there. They were just sitting in the garage with all the other trash. My friend let me go through the box and take what I wanted. I could only smuggle like 15 books out. I used them for years, and traded them for other stuff. Once later in high school I traded 3 hustlers for a pellet gun, a penthouse for some nunchucks, etc. It was great. This was in the 90s before the internet, so magazines were valuable. Heisenberg Cook said. At my school they took all sweets out of the vending machines and replaced them with healthy snacks. In a local town there was a sweet shop where you could buy a kilo of mixed sweets for £5, so every week I would go there and buy 1 pound of small paper bags and spend the Sunday night before school repackaging them all ready for the week ahead. Come Monday I would go into school and load my bag up every day selling the bags for 50p. Tune It Out said. That late 90s ECW was hard to get to hold of. My buddies and I would pool money to watch the PPV events at my house and always recorded them on VHS. Unfortunately my mother saw an especially bloody ECW match, so we could only order WWE events. Luckily I was always nice to the 2 Ike kids and they had all of the ECW shit. They would always loan me tapes to copy over the weekend, and on Monday we would be so excited to talk about them. Vistamita said. Apple laptops in middle school. Some had iTunes, some didn't, and the kids wanted it, so I apparently was the only one who knew how to transfer the installer with my USB. I put it on everyone's laptop for gifts, favors, etc. in return. Got caught by the sub that day. I told her it was my flash drive, I could do what I wanted with it. And that's how I got my second detention of my life. Edit. Gifts were typical middle schooler shit. Yu-Gi-Oh cards, fruit snacks, best food trades during lunch, gain in popularity and hang out with the cool people. Obviously they were taking advantage of me, but I didn't mind. Bill Riker said. My high school had a film club that would shoot short films, thus needing some equipment. The teacher in charge of it would raise money for it by buying bulk boxes of candy bars and Pop-Tarts at Costco and sell them between classes for $1 each. He always had a line out the door of his classroom. Eventually he got shut down because the cafeteria manager complained that students buying snacks at school apparently kept them from buying the pig slop food the cafeteria served. Lelu Water said, "These little game coupons that our teacher gave out for winning class quiz games. Right when people were starting to get scanners printers in their own home, some kid made copies of his coupons and sold or traded them to other students. Edit. Since I have some people asking what the coupons could be traded for, it was usually a piece of candy or a pencil with a fun print or something similar. I think the kids ended up getting caught like 2 weeks into the scheme." Edit 2. A lot of people are comparing this to Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which I've heard of but never read before. I think kids are just clever and do this kind of thing on their own because a lot of people in the replies had similar things happen in their own schools as well. I don't know if this is where the kid got his idea or not, but this may have been before those books came out. Laser Dog said, "In a similar vein, our high school had homework passes redeemable across all classes. You could use them as either one free pass for a homework assignment or a one-day delay on a large report. They even had a void message if copied. The teachers got them from the principal at the beginning of each quarter and they passed them out with wild abandon to anyone showing interest in class. The market was flooded. I'd buy them from kids for $2 each. Then I'd wait. At the end of the quarter, larger reports would be due. Rich kids would buy them back from me for $25 minus $50 each. I once made $370 in the last 5 days of the quarter. Whatever I earned, I'd typically only use a total of $15.20 to buy the next wave of homework passes. The rest was mine to keep. It all started with a single 0.75-cent investment, and that was the only bit of money I ever paid from my own pocket to keep it going." Fatalistic Foings said, "This was late middle school for me. They were so highly coveted in our school that, if you had rare ones, you'd rather shoot yourself in the foot than give them away. I remember the fantasy pack was rare and came with bands shaped like a genie and unicorn and that shit. I only knew like 2 kids that had that pack and everyone was gagging to trade with them. Of course that didn't happen. So effectively, in the inner workings of my middle school, a caste system was created from fucking rubber bands. All silly bands are equal, but some are more equal than others." Bhagwan Bill said, "I had the principal's secretary's handwriting down and used to sell hall passes for $1 each. Made a killing." Edit. I don't really know how much I made, but it was in the realm of $5 a day. Sometimes I went dry because you needed the actual pass paper, but I finally figured out how to get into the supply closet, slide the student ID by the latch bolt. I only took a few pads at a time so they wouldn't get suspicious. Edit 2. I could also forge my mother's signature. Did it so well that when I brought in a note from her that she scribbled on the dash, they called her to confirm." Rocket Goo IDC said, "MP3s and CDRs were just becoming available. A guy I knew made a killing on mixed CDs. Every week he circulated forms to fill out, where you selected the songs you wanted on the CD. The newest hits were on the top, and changed weekly. The rest of his library filled the rest of the form, and there was a space for requests. He'd deliver your disc the following week. He seriously made bank for a couple years until everybody started getting their own songs from LimeWire or whatever. I don't know what he's doing now, 20 years later, but I don't doubt he's successful." Edit. Just as a bit of an aside, since a few responses have mentioned LimeWire, when this guy started doing it in HS, the only real avenues for music sharing were Usenet groups and IRC. Behind Time said, "A few of us did this when I was in college. This was back when CD burners were still $500 plus, and CDRs were $5 plus. My dorm floor had a bunch of pirates on it. Actually, they probably had the majority of burners for the entire campus, and it was a fairly large school. They made an agreement to standardize prices so that no one would get ripped off, and everyone contributed money to bulk purchase blank CDs. That, and one person also would mod people's PSXs for $25. So, every week, and it was a rotating group of people, some people in our dorm would pretty much buy every new game at EB and Babbage's, they'd burn a copy, and they'd just return all the games. This was back when they still allowed open package returns and never bothered collecting any data. You have the receipt? That's good enough." Bill Bapapa said, "Nintendo games. Some kids sold them off for like 10 or 15 bucks a pop. I don't know where he got them from, but he said he just told his dad what he wanted and his dad would get it for him. He'd ask for the same ones over and over and it didn't matter. He'd end up with 5 copies and he'd just sell 4 of them. Either the kid was the most spoiled brat in history, or his dad was straight up stealing them anyhow. Anyways, I could never get any. I had a Sega, but I remember that kid making a killing in grade 3. Updates and answers. It was NES. Yes, please tell me how to download a car. Rosalie 2222 said, "This girl Danielle convinced my best friend and I, along with some other people, that she could forever change the taste of saliva in our mouth. So that our saliva would taste like watermelon, cotton candy, bubble gum, etc. forever. She made us wait a couple days so we could really think about what flavor we wanted in our mouth forever. For example, she would tell us, 'Are you sure you always want everything you eat to have a hint of watermelon?' Anyways, after a couple days, and we picked a flavor, she charged us money. I can't remember how much, but it was probably $0.50 or something. She made us chew on all this crazy stuff like paper clips, erasers, and other things. Obviously her saliva never changed flavor and she stopped this. But I worked at Starbucks a couple years ago in my hometown and she came in and didn't even recognize me, and all I could think about was how the girl hid me chewing on paper clips." Deleted said, "I lived in an area with a lot of retiree-age people, a lot of which ended up raising their grandchildren. It really isn't a good area. Being older and from a rural area, they still don't trust online sites like eBay or Amazon, so I started ordering people things from those sites for actual money and added a charge for me to be making money off of it. It eventually got shut down because I got someone a USB in the shape of a pistol. It was the size of a USB and clearly a USB, but it didn't matter. The principal actually got the police involved to try to get me in real trouble." Cornipolog said, "During elementary school in the 80s, many candies weren't individually wrapped for resale in stores, think Warheads etc. I bought bulk packs of candy, didn't matter what kind, although atomic fireballs were my cash cow. I individually packed them, or maybe a couple to a pack depending on the candy. I used those tiny Ziplocs you see people use for drugs. Being around adults a little devoid of scruples, I was able to get those in bulk from a local head shop called High on the Hill. It was a surreal time looking back. I was the only supplier for a year solid in 4th grade. I made so much bank for a 10-year-old it was insane. I would make $100 a week just off of atomic fireballs. The bulk jugs were about $5 or $6 each wholesale, and at a quarter each it worked out to about $60 a jug profit if I recall. Luckily school came easy to me because it was a full-time job keeping stock, packaging product, counting piles of change, budgeting, keeping a bank register. Mom got a separate account that I used for my money, dodging the man etc. It was turbulent as I never really had a group of friends as a kid, but in the 4th grade I was the fucking man. Going from having no real good friends and having my time divided by either being picked on or ignored, to becoming the belle of the ball was surreal. Even at that time I was able to realize what was going on. Their smiles were all fake. Their interest was not in me, but rather what was in my bag any given day. Girls were not saying hello because they were being polite, or even the least bit interested in talking to me. They were just waiting their turn for their fix. That denim bag got more Cornipolog said, attention than I ever dreamed of. I was just along for the ride. I had laid the groundwork and provided the blueprint. When the 5th grade started there was competition, but they were weak. They would always sell out, or only buy enough to make a few bucks here and there, largely selling lollipops or pre-packed stuff, Hershey's Kisses, Bit-O Honey or Tootsie Rolls, whatever they could grab at the store before school. It was amateur hour. They had made a mockery of something I took seriously as a 10/11-year-old can take something. I closed up shop pretty quickly after the school year began. The fast life and fast money was over. The excitement wasn't there, the smiles weren't as big. Kids came to me as a last resort. They bought the popular kids completely out before looking my way. It was like flipping a switch. My first day without the bag I had a few kids ask if I was holding, but once word got around that I was out of the game everything went back to normal. No friends, no conversation, no one to sit with at lunch or on the bus. No one interested, fake or otherwise. It's the first time I had ever really witnessed the dynamic of being disingenuine. I had always been authentic, and after it was all over, I was happy to stay that way. I've never really recounted this time into words. As it turns out, I learned a lot of life lessons in the 4th grade. TLDR, I peaked in 4th grade. Papa Dumeo Mao said. Marbles were big at my primary school. Real big. It got to the stage where they were only allowed for 3 months a year, as we would no longer discuss anything but the game we hit or the make we wanted to pay for. That was marble season. Now you could buy a big bag of cat's eyes from the supermarket, but they wouldn't get you far. To play the high-stakes games, you needed a spect egg, a glitter bomb, a tidal wave, or something exotic, but those suckers were pricey. Us poor kids couldn't afford those things, so we secretly gambled our marbles through the year, so when marble season opened, we had amassed enough marbles to really be ahead of the game. Being caught with marbles outside of marble season was bad. Real bad. One kid got 5 strokes of the cane. This being so, it was a big risk to hide in the shadows of the trees and sling those little glass balls about. Not only did it hone your skills for the season start, but you got good at taking the shot and then acting nonchalant. Marbles were currency. You could trade lunches with them or buy time on playground equipment. There was a good reason they banned marbles at my school. We turned it into some sort of mafia shit. Caspier said. I ran it. For a few spare years in elementary, books got banned in the classroom. Not blacklisted books, but literally books in general. They were far too distracting, even though most kids read when done with work, etc. I started smuggling books to school and peddling them out to kids. It started out innocently. I had loads of Hank the Cowdog books that I was super into, and I hid them in my desk, and I loaned them to close friends when asked. But soon, the entire class knew. And that spread to the school. I became a full-time book smuggler. I had a system where there was a 2-week borrowing limit, kept a log of who, what book, when, ran a teensy little library for myself, basically, and I made sure these kids were treating the books fairly. If anything came back damaged, they were banned from borrowing. Kept this up until middle school, which was considerably less totalitarian. Edits, spelling, sorry, mobile. Edit 2, thank you for the silver and gold, holy crow. I'm about to hop off, but I'm glad some people got a genuine smile out of this. It's probably the only really interesting thing I've ever done, so this made my whole day. I hope everyone has a lovely one. Prolapsed Peniel said. I was the dirty magazine dealer when I was in middle school in the 80s. First I found my parents' porn stash. Boxes and boxes and boxes stashed. Basement boxes by the washing machine and under the Civil War swords. Guest bedroom under the bed, at least 50, standing cabinet in the kitchen, cabinets near the ceiling, all over their bedroom, under the china. We were riddled with it. Yeah, I went through my parents' bedroom. There were hundreds of porno mags in the house and I was 11. Only God and my parents knew what was in there and I had to find out. After I had gotten bored of some, I started selling them to other kids, $20 each in 1984 money. The titty magazine market was booming, selling to other adolescents. I had a client base and had to get more. I'd go into a bookstore and ask for the most esoteric book that I could imagine. The clerk would go check in the back and I'd stuff all the Penthouse Playboy mags in my bag and book it. Maybe a comic book too, treat yourself. Many years later I returned to my hometown and went to that bookstore. I wanted to apologize and try to make up for it somehow. It was gone. Sorry about that, Walden Books. We were boys and you had boobs. Deleted, said. Myself and 3 other friends, all Asian, sold those Asian jelly straws, something non-Asian kids are unfamiliar with but were in love with when discovered, caramel apple pops, and Mexican lollipops, large Latin community, and saw the opportunity to make more money, covered in Tajin in middle school. Each straw was 25 cents, 5 for $1, and pops would go for 75 cents to $1 depending on the demand. We would each have a jar of the jelly straws in our own locker, a bag of pops and a small box of quarters and cash. Every period, we would restock our backpack and sell while walking to and from class and in our class period. It was great. As a middle schooler, $20, split between 4 of us, $5 per kid, a day was the equivalent of making 6 figures now in adult life. Life was great. Until one day my friend's locker got broken into. Someone had watched over his shoulder when he put his locker combination in and came back later. They took all the snacks, all the cash, about $100 worth, and everything else in the trash. school eventually banned the jelly straws but not the pops. Large Latin communities still brought their own eaten snacks, and made students who got caught reselling snacks get suspended. My 3 friends and I were content back then. We had made roughly $2,000 from our classmates and still got to eat the Asian straws at home. Now I work 40+ hour weeks to pay rent and eat fast food. Growing up sucks. I am the Law 91 said. We created an entire black market currency and economy based on rocks. Story below. I used to manage one of 3 mining operations that were running concurrently on the elementary school playground, back in the mid to late 90s. This school was located in a small town in southeast Tennessee, rural and bordered by the Cherokee National Forest. The shinier or smoother the rock, the more valuable it could be. Rocks were traded between kids and their peers for snacks, drinks, homework bribes, even protection from bullies. Whoever controlled the rocks, controlled the playground. My operation had the largest kids, using the biggest boulders that were chipped into rounded points to break up the largest rocks down to manageable size for a bunch of little kids, and we had the most hands with sticks and straight-edged rocks, for digging and dirt displacement. At the end of a day of work, we would place a huge rock on top of our mining hole, too big for most anyone to lift, besides a select few guys that all worked for me. Of course, I'm sure any of the 4th, 5th or 6th graders could have, at the time, had they cared to. 2 other operations existed. One that was made up of all girls, though their rock output was shabby at best. And another group that did their work inside of the dome-shaped jungle gym, providing the most protection from intruders and thieves, while also providing line-of-sight obstruction to the teachers and others. I am the Law 91 said. As a manager, I would walk the edge of the playground looking for strong sticks and perfect digging rocks, because the durability of sticks and pieces of chipped rock required a pretty steady supply of unbroken tools to work with. On the occasion that the classes had recess at different times, a lot of thievery and sabotage would happen. Rocks would get stolen and mining holes would get filled with trash and debris. I recently visited the old school, which was closed in the mid-2000s and is now abandoned and has fallen into disrepair. The hole though? It's still there. All this time still hasn't fixed the impact my class and others had on that old playground. That's about all I can remember from the experience, but I do still have my own personal collection of rocks from that playground that I took home bit by bit over many years in elementary school. A box full of stupidity and imagination. It's the Joker said. In college, our dorm Roz decided to run this thing where if you were being a model citizen in their eyes, they'd give you these little printed pieces of fake money that were printed on different colors of heavy paper. You could use these to redeem at the front desk for stuff that cost money to rent, like pots and pans, video games, etc. We found out that the campus bookstore sold the same type of paper that they were using, and so with a little time and Photoshop later, we were able to mass produce these things that were worth $1 each for something like 3 cents each. We didn't get caught, but the Roz dropped a program after they had a big event for people to turn into their coupon things and they ended up with 650 more than they thought were in circulation. In our defense, we were bored. Arch Satire said. I ran a black market sour gumball operation in grade 5. We'd buy them in bulk, sell them for 5 cents each, and make about $12 in profit a bag. Did it just off of the school property line at the edge of the field, so it was legit? One of our staff was a keener with a principal for a father, and a teacher for a mother. He cracked under questioning from staff, and narsed us out. Even though we weren't doing anything against school rules and weren't on school property, I feigned illness the next day, let the whole thing blow over, and nothing came of it. I had hustling in my blood from a young age. The Eplist said. Lemonheads, Johnny Apple Treats, Jolly Rancher Sticks, Red Hots, etc. Most of them cost 10 cents at the store, and I charged $0.25. Only made like $5 a week, but this was the 80s. Also, we had a huge marble thing going on out during recess. Lots of trading, purchases, etc. Everyone was convinced baby marbles, clay marbles, were worth a lot more than other marbles. In the 80s, a lot of the old World War II era clay marbles ended up in grandkids' collections. Teehee kids weren't wrong, there just weren't that many actual babbies around in school. I had one real one. I found a pharmacy in the next town over that sold bags of ceramic marbles that looked and felt like clay. I didn't flood the market exactly, but I did get plenty of free candy and pop after school, as well as my pick of the best marbles on the playground. Janica said. Salt. And I ran it. I was one of the few kids who brought my own lunch to school, because we couldn't afford to pay for school lunches and my mom was too proud to sign up for reduced price lunch. Given the state of cafeteria food, I really didn't mind too much. One time I brought some hard-boiled eggs to school, probably right after Easter. Of course I brought salt to put on them, but I brought way too much because what 6th grader knows how much salt she'll need? A couple of friends asked for some of my salt because the soup from the cafeteria was so bland, and I gave them some. That brought down the wrath of the teachers upon our heads because we were destroying the delicate nutritional balance of their bland-ass soup, and salt was banned from the cafeteria. But since I was bringing my own lunches, I found ways to sneak salt in, and eventually I had a whole black market for salt like this was freaking 1st century Rome or something. Salt packets from fast food places were especially convenient, though you had to hide the evidence. I hated that school so much. It was a relief to transfer to the new charter school the next year. Suddenly I wasn't constantly in trouble for things like getting bullied. I actually learned things. Amazing. Deleted, said. In varsity, I used to sell alcohol to all the high school kids. Our varsity was in a town that also had 3 high schools. So often on weekends one could see high school kids milling around. One day this high school kid asks me a beer and paid the equivalent of $2. I only paid about $7 for the case. So I asked if he wanted more, and that's how my business started. Worth noting that these guys were 16 years old. I sold at 3, sometimes 4 times the retail price. Did this for 2 years and made a load of cash, like an extra $300 a month. Stopped because I left varsity. LDR sold alcohol to high school kids for 4 times the original price. Inferno 138 said. My brother was assigned office duty. $5 to remove an absence. $20 or higher to change a grade. He made a killing until a girl tatted him out after he wouldn't help her. They wanted to expel him, but it was worked out that he would be tutored in the library for the last 2 months before graduation and he could walk. He didn't give a shit. The girl, well, let's just say she got hers from a few girls who weren't happy. She only spent a few days in the hospital. The school triple passworded everything and office duty and study halls were done away with. Change. Still to this day, if someone meets me and asks if I'm his brother, they say how he saved so many people. In our district, 7 absences in a marking period meant Fs in all classes. Jack Nelson 04 said, we do something called senior assassination. It's almost the exact same thing, but you use Nerf guns to get the people and you only are given up to a week to assassinate the other person. The only other rules are, if you shoot the person that's trying to assassinate you, you are given an hour where they cannot get you. You may not shoot someone who is at work. You may not shoot on school or church grounds. It seems like a lot of you never played because I'm just completed my freshman year. Everyone puts $5 into play and the winner gets half of the pot. The person with most kills gets the other half. Inadi said. Teacher here. I work in a small, rural district where everybody knows everybody. The kids don't even keep locks on their lockers, which is crazy to me, but they're that trusting of each other. Then I noticed a couple of the students had locks on their backpacks. Weird. But okay. Then I noticed some of my troublemakers going up to the backpack kids all sneaky like. I see them exchange some cash and I'm thinking, God, right here in the open. Then one of the backpack kids takes off his backpack and I'm standing there, thinking these kids must think I'm a student. I'm about their same height. I avoid hallways during class changes for this reason. Backpack kid unlocks his backpack and slides a pack of Skittles over to my troublemaker and I die inside. How even my troublemakers aren't that bad.